Mosaic, a daily news program from Worldlink TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
According to U.S. sources, more than 90 people died and 160 were injured during three massive explosions which shook the Saudi capital, Riyadh, last night. The Saudi authorities say that the assailants are linked to Al-Qaeda. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy advises its citizens to remain in their homes. The U.S. Secretary of State, Colin Powell, goes to Saudi Arabia and visits one of the areas that was bombed. Powell declared that this operation has Al-Qaeda's fingerprints on it. Khatami met with Hezbollah's Secretary General and the Maronites Patriarch at the presidential palace in Baghdad. Khatami said that education, politics, and morals are the main points of discussion. Meanwhile, Nasrallah calls for a united front to face the U.S. threats.
Threats to Syria, Lebanon, and the Palestinian people serve the interests of the Israeli entity, serving their demands and security at the cost of the people and countries of this region. We reject these threats, and if God is willing, we will reasonably deal with them.
The Israeli police arrest Sheikh Ra'id Salah, leader of the northern wing of Islamic Jihad, from the Arabs of 1948. They also arrested 13 other people, accusing them of money laundering to help the families of the detained and martyred. The arrest campaigns were concentrated in the Arab city of al-Fahm in northern Israel. The Izz ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades, which is the military wing of Hamas, declares its responsibility for firing mortar shells at the Gush Katif settlement, wounding 9 Israeli soldiers. Exiled Iraqis are now returning to their country after years of being banished to foreign countries. Ahmed Jassim was from the Iraqi opposition. He reunited with his family after a quarter of a century of separation. However, his happiness was cut short when he discovered that his parents have passed away and saw that Iraq has unexpectedly changed.
Ahmed Jassim was crying as he was looking out the airplane window to see Baghdad, a city he left behind 25 years ago. As a young man, he joined the Iraqi opposition and paid the price by being detained and exiled. At first, he was hesitant to visit his family, so we accompanied him to the city of Al-Thawra, and memories came back.
This is the city I lived in. I grew up here, went to school, worked, and ate here. This area is poor, but the ties here are very strong, unlike anywhere else in the world.
He appeared to be speechless when he saw Baghdad's streets turned into rubble. We arrived at the city of Al-Thawra, where the oppressed Shiite population lives.
I'm about to see my brothers now, but I had also hoped to see my parents.
Ahmad had to ask for directions to his family's home since he has forgotten the way to it. We finally arrived.
يلا بيحون نسبح ونرجع حبيبي بعدين ما بدون انتظار انا حشفتي بابا حبيبي
This is Ahmad's picture when he was a young man. The other picture is of his father. This is what remains of his young days.
I know that my father waited 25 years to see me. I will visit him and my mother at the cemetery.
عاشت الأم تنتظر عودة الابن.
His mom waited to see him, but she died before seeing Ahmad.
من توفت يعني هالفشين قصبا.
When she died, it was very hard. It is like your roots have been cut.
قطع. يعني هي تعذبت من وراي، بهذلت. يعني شافت كل الويلات من وراي.
She suffered a lot because of me. They had to suffer a lot more than I did.
ثمن أكثر ما احنا ندفع.
لحظات ذهول.
People congratulating a family uniting, and an exiled man finally returns home after years of being banished to foreign lands.
أخيرا عاد عماد بعد.
Ahmad has finally returned home after 25 years of exile. He came back to relive painful memories. His father and mother have died, and all what remains is this poor house. Hashim Ahl Barra, Abu Dhabi Television, Baghdad.
استقبل صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير عبد الله بن عبد العزيز ولي العهد.
Today, His Highness Crown Prince Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz, the Deputy Prime Minister and Head of the National Guard, received His Excellency the United States Secretary of State in the Al-Yamama Palace.
وقد نقل معاليه لصاحب السمو الملكي الأمير عبد الله بن عبد
Colin
العزيز.
Powell gave the regards of His Excellency United States President George W. Bush to His Highness Crown Prince Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz, who in turn gave him his regards as well. They discussed the situation in the region, beginning with Iraq and the need to preserve its security, independence, sovereignty, and regional well-being.
ووحدة أراضيه واستقلاله وسلامته الإقليمية، إضافة إلى تطورات القضية الفلسطينية والحاجة إلى الإسراع.
They also discussed the Palestinian crisis, reiterating the need for the immediate implementation of the roadmap, while achieving just peace in the region as called for by the Arab Peace Initiative, which was declared at the Beirut summit. Furthermore, they discussed the ties between the two countries. Attending the meeting were the Foreign Minister, His Highness Prince Saud Al Faisal, the Saudi Ambassador to the United States, His Highness Prince Bandar bin Sultan bin Abdul Aziz, the Crown Prince's advisors, His Highness Prince Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz, and His Highness Prince Bandar bin Sultan ibn Muhammad Al Saud.
المستشار في ديوان سمو ولي العهد وصاحب السمو الأمير الدكتور بندر بن سلمان بن محمد آل سعود المستشار في ديوان سمو ولي العهد.
Also in attendance, the State Minister and Member of Cabinet, His Highness Prince Abdul Aziz bin Fahd ibn Abdul Aziz, the Head of the Prime Minister's Office, Advisor to the Crown Prince Mr. Abdul Muhsin bin Abdul Aziz Al Tuwaigari, and the United States Ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Robert Jordan.
وسفير الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية لدى المملكة روبرت جوردن. قام صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير عبد الله بن عبد العزيز ولي العهد نائب رئيس مجلس الوزراء ورئيس الحرس الوطني.
This afternoon, His Highness Crown Prince Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz, who is the Deputy Prime Minister and Head of the National Guard, visited the site of yesterday's attack on the Final complex in Riyadh. His Highness the Crown Prince was accompanied by His Highness Prince Sultan bin Abdul Aziz, who is the Assistant Deputy to the Prime Minister and Minister of Defense and the Air Force. They inspected the site of the explosion and surveyed the work carried out by the different agencies.
واطمأن على الإجراءات التي تقوم بها الجهات المعنية. كما التقى سموه الكريم.
His Highness met with the workers of the complex and comforted them.
أحوالهم. بعد ذلك قام صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير عبد الله بن عبد العزيز
Later, His Highness Crown Prince Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz visited the wounded in the King Fahd National Guard Hospital.
في مستشفى الملك فهد للحرس الوطني. ولدى وصول سموه إلى المستشفى.
His Highness was accompanied by His Highness Prince Sultan bin Abdulaziz. They were received by His Excellency, the General Health Director in the National Guard, Dr. Abdel Jaber, and a number of other officials.
وقد اطمأن سمو ولي العهد على المصابين المنومين واستمع إلى شرح.
His Highness visited the wounded and listened to an explanation of their injuries and wished them all a speedy recovery.
وللجميع الشفاء العاجل.
This is the worst case. He is suffering from injuries to the head, thigh, and stomach. They performed surgery on his stomach here, since his situation is unstable and he cannot be transported to the operating room. So the surgeons came here and operated on him, trying to stop the bleeding. Now, his condition is stabilizing. However, he remains in critical condition.
May God give him health.
He had an operation today, and we took x-rays of the head. This man is Saudi. He is suffering injuries to the hand, thigh, and his left foot.
May God give him health.
U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney said 91 people died in the suspected Al-Qaeda attacks on housing compounds in the Saudi Arabian capital, Riyadh. Among the victims were a dozen Americans. However, there is still no definite final number for the attack's toll. Nida Ramahi has the story.
It could have been a scene from a frightening movie when suicide bombers armed with rifles shot their way into guarded fortified compounds where expatriates lived, letting off 3 massive coordinated car bombs. But it was reality. According to the U.S. State Department, more than 90 people were killed, including 10 to 12 Americans. Witnesses said the attackers appeared to have driven through the gates of the 3 housing compounds, guns blazing, and charged past armed guards in a hail of automatic fire before detonating massive charges aboard their vehicles. A U.S. official said one of the compounds housed employees of Renault Corps, a U.S. defense contractor which trains the Saudi National Guard. The others, Al-Hamra and Al-Jadwal complexes, housed Saudis and Arab Americans and other foreigners. The statement also said 194 people had been wounded in the simultaneous massive car bomb blasts. Saudi Arabia condemned the attack and said that investigations were underway to determine those behind the blasts.
Both the blood of Saudi citizen was mixed in this tragic event with American blood. It shows, but it is no consolation that these things happen everywhere. And it is truly a battle of long standing that we are waging against terrorism.
President Bush vowed to bring the culprits to justice, saying the war on terror continues.
Today's attacks in Saudi Arabia, the ruthless murder of American citizens and other citizens, remind us that the war on terror continues.
Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell told reporters in Riyadh that 10 Americans and many more foreigners were among the dead. Powell said the attack was well executed and showed the nature of the enemy.
Even in this moment of sadness, we will commit ourselves again to redouble our efforts, work closely with our Saudi friends and friends all around the world to go after Al-Qaeda, to go after terrorists, to go after those who would kill innocent people.
Although investigations have yet to determine who was behind the attack, fingers are being pointed in the direction of Al-Qaeda, and some have even suggested that they may have regrouped since bin Laden's disappearance. Idara Mahi, join television.
Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and his Palestinian counterpart Mahmoud Abbas will meet for the first time on Saturday evening. A senior Palestinian diplomat confirmed the date of the meeting, which follows talks by U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell with Israelis and Palestinians to promote the roadmap to peace. Sharon rejected any talk of dismantling Jewish settlements in the foreseeable future, despite U.S. calls for conciliatory gestures to advance the new peace plan. As part of efforts to push forward the peace roadmap, Palestinian President Yasser Arafat met the Russian envoy to the Middle East, Andrei Vdovin, in the West Bank city of Ramallah. Arafat's advisor, Nabil Aburdaineh, said that the main obstacle to any progress between Palestinians and Israelis is that Israel has not officially declared its approval of the peace plan.
The only thing is the Israeli refusal to the roadmap. The Palestinians accepted and approved the roadmap. Unfortunately, the quartet, including the United States, are incapable of forcing Israel to declare openly and officially their acceptance and approval for the roadmap.
In West Jerusalem, Greek Foreign Minister Papandreou, currently President of the European Union, met with Israeli President Moshe Katsav and later met the Palestinian President in Ramallah. Israeli police have arrested 14 Israeli Arabs accused of illegally funneling money to Palestinian Islamic leaders of the Intifada to aid the families of suicide bombers. Among those detained is Sheikh Ra'ed Salah, the leader of the northern branch of Israel's Islamic movement, who has often accused Israel of trying to undermine Islamic rights in Jerusalem. The police raids, which followed a 2-year investigation, focused on the northern Arab Israeli town of al-Fahim. Police declined to identify the origin of the funds, but Israeli media said the money had been directed to Hamas and Islamic Jihad. A Hamas official in Gaza denied receiving money from Israel's Islamic movement. Dozens of Arabs demonstrated against the arrest. Ahmad Tibi, an Arab member of the Israeli parliament, called the crackdown on a group devoted to charity and social welfare a witch hunt, which he said was counterproductive. The detainee's lawyer said the trial was against Israeli law. Despite the U.S. drive for peace, violence persisted, with Israeli troops demolishing homes and arresting Palestinians in the West Bank raids. 10 Israeli soldiers were wounded in a mortar attack by Palestinian gunmen on an army base near the Gush Qatif settlement in the southern Gaza Strip. The soldiers were evacuated to a hospital in the southern city of Beersheba. The Israeli army reimposed a travel ban on the Gaza Strip despite a pledge to make humanitarian gestures towards the Palestinians as part of the new U.S. peace plan. In continuing Israeli raids, troops arrested 6 Palestinians in Nablus and demolished 3 buildings in the northern West Bank city.
Australian Foreign Minister Alexander Downer blamed Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda network for the bomb attack in Saudi Arabia. Downer said the Australian government had become more concerned about the possibility of such attacks in the country in recent weeks and had adjusted its travel advisory to warn of the risks.
But of course these are early. Well, we know that we haven't fixed up Al-Qaeda yet. We've had a great deal of success in dealing with Al-Qaeda. Something like 3,000 Al-Qaeda operatives have either been killed or apprehended over the last 18 months, but there are still others left. And as you've heard in your report, we've been concerned in particular about Saudi Arabia in recent weeks. In fact, we adjusted our travel advisory, I think it was on the 1st of May, alerting Australians who are reading those travel advisories to possible attacks in Saudi Arabia. That was because we had particular concerns there could be an Al-Qaeda attack there.
Iranian President Said Mohammad Khatami met Hezbollah Secretary General Said Hassan Nasrallah as part of a series of meetings with political, religious and national figures. Said Nasrallah expressed his appreciation to Said Khatami for his historical visit to Lebanon and his support of the resistance movement against the 22-year-old Israeli occupation of the south. He told him that the Lebanese people regard this visit as a confirmation of this support quote. Al-Manar Channel knew that Said Khatami reiterated the Iranian support to Lebanon and its resistance, adding that defending land and expelling the occupiers is resistance and not terrorism. Terror means occupying land, expelling its residents, as the Israelis are doing, Said Khatami said, adding that terrorism is killing people to achieve political scores. He said that Israel's killing of Lebanese people and its occupation of Lebanese territory is one of the ugliest forms of terrorism. He addressed Said Hassan saying, quote, "You are fighting terror and defying the international terrorism," adding that one of the significant issues that he noticed is that there is a unanimous agreement on the resistance and the appreciation and respect that Hezbollah has acquired in Lebanon, describing this as joyful. Upon speaking to reporters, Said Hassan said that he and Khatami discussed the situation in the region and the threats directed to Syria, Lebanon and the Palestinian people as well. He added that those threats aimed at supporting Israel and protecting its security on the cost of the security of the peoples of the region.
We didn't discuss the issue of the status of the border, but we talked about the situation of the region with the recent developments in the region and the threats towards Syria, Lebanon and the Palestinian people. These threats serve the needs of the Israeli occupation force, and its demands and conditions come at the price of the region's security. Our position, of course, is the rejection of these threats, and we call for the facing of these threats with strength and responsibility. As you know, Iran is also facing threats through other means, so our position is one of solidarity between Iran, Syria, Lebanon, the resistance movement and the Palestinian people, as well as the people of these nations. We must stand united in the face of these threats, and we must stand up to these threats with responsibility and presence and not abandon our rights.
The Shiite Iraqi leader Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir al-Hakim continued upon his recent arrival to his country to release strong stances against the American occupation. Earlier, he denounced the US-led occupation forces and demanded they pull out and allow the Iraqi people to establish their own government. More in this report.
In an emotional homecoming to the holy city of Najaf, Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir al-Hakim declared Iraqis need to sacrifice to rebuild, telling thousands of supporters who greeted him to oppose foreign domination. He said that the American and the British helped Saddam Hussein until his last breath to kill Iraqis, and they helped Taliban in Afghanistan. He said, quote, "Our enemies are preying on us. They try to make us weak." Hakim urged his people to demonstrate and work together to have a new Iraqi government. His words are likely to fuel U.S. concerns, as U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell considered that the appearance of an Islamic government in Iraq would not be in favor of Iraqis or its neighborhoods. The U.S. State Department, which has been engaged in a fight with the Pentagon over the post-war government, support the new change of the U.S. Iraqi administration, describing it as a natural part of the evolution of the administration, which is now headed by career diplomat Paul Bremer. The new U.S. governor of post-war occupied Iraq flew into Baghdad to take the helm of a troubled U.S. administration that has seen much of the nation descend into lawlessness and chaos.
We will be in the process of discussing with appropriate people in Iraq the transition to a Iraqi government at a timeline that still has to be determined. The coalition forces did not come to colonize Iraq. We came to overthrow a despotic regime. That we've done. Now our job is to turn and help the Iraqi people regain control of their own destiny, to help the Iraqi society rebuild on the basis of individual liberties, respect for the rule of law, and respect for each other.
The United States defended outcoming members of its post-war team, saying it had accomplished its goal and there was nothing unusual about apparent abrupt change to its composition. The new governor is expected to put into place a new team, replacing most, if not all, of the officials who had been working under the retired U.S. General Jay Garner, according to U.S. State Department Philip Rieker. Rieker denied that the reassignment of at least 4 current U.S. envoys that had been working under Garner was related to poor performance. In Baghdad, as in other Iraqi towns, U.S. administration has faced blistering criticism over the slow pace of public service and virtual anarchy, which is reigning since the U.S.-led invasion controlled Baghdad. However, these concerns now radiated far beyond the immediate region, with British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw saying the situation in Baghdad is not satisfactory, and he acknowledged that it was the responsibility of the US and its partners to ensure that it becomes satisfactory very quickly.
After an 11-year-old Iraqi boy, Karar Hussein, seriously injured himself while playing with a mortar, a demining force from Mozambique has secured the area for remaining ordnance, finding and exploding several rocket-propelled grenades and other dangerous items. Surrounded by his family, Karar Hussein held back his tears as he described the accident that nearly cost him his life. In the meantime, there are countless children like Karar for whom playing with guns could mean life or death.
I went outside to play. I found a burned launcher. I was trying to reach it, so I dropped the missile on the floor. It didn't explode at once. First, it caught on fire, and while I was trying to escape, it exploded.
He was playing with this launcher. The explosive was inside it, so when it fell down, it exploded. What can you do for a kid? Can you tie him up at home? Only if you can do that, you will prevent him from going out. Besides, we don't even have a house. Right there is a small house that used to be, and it was destroyed by coalition forces as they advanced on Baghdad. The house we are living in now doesn't belong to us, so what can you do for a child?
The death toll from a devastating attack on the pro-Russian government's building in Chechnya rose to 52 Tuesday and was expected to go higher, according to Russia's Deputy General Prosecutor Sergei Fridinsky. More than 110 people were injured in the attack, 57 of whom are in critical condition. The bombing is apparently one of the deadliest single attacks since conflict between Chechen fighters and federal Russian troops broke out in October 1999.
President of the U.S. Civil Administration in Iraq, Paul Bremer, arrived in Baghdad today as world politicians continue to emphasize the crucial UN role in Iraq's reconstruction. More follows.
President of the U.S. Civil Administration in Iraq arrived in Baghdad today, accompanied by the U.S. Chief of Staff Richard Myers and the retired General Gay Garner, President of Iraq's Reconstruction Office. Myers admitted that no mass destruction weapons have been found so far in Iraq, despite the intensive operations carried out by U.S. forces in search of such weapons. Meanwhile, hundreds of Iraqi soldiers gathered near the former headquarters of the Iraqi Air Force, demanding for paying their salaries and guaranteeing a better future for the country. The demonstrators called for making the Iraqis administrate their own resources and elect their government. In Paris, French Foreign Minister Dominique de Villepin affirmed today the necessity of forming a legitimate Iraqi government. In a press interview, de Villepin underlined the importance of the UN role in Iraq's political and economic changes. In London, Minister of International Development Claire Short resigned today in protest of the war against Iraq. Earlier, Claire, who has been in her post since 1997, severely criticized Blair and threatened to resign if her country launched a war against Iraq without the mandate of the UN. Meantime, Turkish President Ahmet Necdet Sezer emphasized today the necessity for the UN to play an effective role during the interim period in Iraq. In a message he delivered today to the Permanent Economic Committee affiliated to the Organization of Islamic Conference, Sezer renewed the stand of his country regarding the protection of Iraq's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation,